Thanks everyone for joining us, guys. So we'll just for people that haven't been on one of our webinars before, we'll just go through a quick slide deck with some introductions, and then we'll get everything kicked off. As I'm sure, as all of you know, this webinar is based on mental fatigue in a remote setting. So Raj, if you would kindly go to the next slide. So I'm, for those of you that don't know, I'm David. I'm a practice lead at AmSource, who are a talent solutions business based in Leeds, but we do have an office in Berlin as well, and we operate throughout Europe. I'll let Mike introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Mike. I do exactly the same job as Dave, but everything outside of the UK, and that's majority of which is out of Berlin, which, yeah, cool. Dave, over to you.
So just a quick introduction to AmSource. So as mentioned, we're a talent solutions business. We work internationally. We also have a tech consultancy arm and a product suite which we use with the people that we work with. We've got an ongoing webinar series which tend to differ in topic, and then we've been around for over 10 years now. This year will be our 11th year. We provide expert advisory solutions as well, and obviously if anyone's got any questions around the work that we do after this, then feel free to give us a call. Over to Mike. I'll let him talk about the community stuff.
Yeah, so whilst our day job is recruitment and talent solutions, we're big on community. I help manage a couple of things based out of predominantly Berlin. So DevOps Berlin, devotsberlin.de. There's a community page. We've run a series of events. We did one, I think last week, was it, Raj?
Yep.
And something new that started this year, again with the help of Raj and Nikhil Grover, if he's joined us, I'm not sure yet, where we run by products. That's a Slack-based community for product leaders. Can be based anywhere, and in product leadership, it's something that could be of interest. I'm also part of the mentoring club, providing free advice to people, whether you're hiring or looking for work or whatever it might be. And it's something that we do. Oh, Nikhil is here. Yeah. We're very, very active in the community. We think it's a big part of what tech is. If anyone wants to know any more about that, feel free to contact me after this through LinkedIn. I'll tell you more.
Yeah. And then this event, so this one kind of follows on nicely from events that we held last year on remote working series. Obviously, like most people, it got to March last year and we were all locked down, and I think a lot of that at the time was a lot of companies that we knew didn't know how to operate best remotely, and some of the things around onboarding and things like that. So we hosted a series of events with the companies below, helping people get up to speed on that kind of thing and answer the questions. And then the natural progression was now that everyone's up to speed managing working remotely, how do we make sure that everyone is operating efficiently and that we can look after them the same way as we would if they were in the office, which kind of led to this event. Raj,
I think
move on, that'd be great.
We've been planning this one a while, haven't we, since the end of last summer, and with back into another lockdown through the winter. It's I think everyone's felt the impact of kind of all being isolated and trapped a little bit, and that's whilst we're all working, that there are consequences of that, and that's kind of what led us to this today. So mental fatigue in a remote setting. We're going to do a quick introduction. Daniel's got some really interesting statistics to share with us. Then we'll talk about lockdown, living alone, digital co-working spaces, collaboration hubs, and how these might work. Let's just check in and see how everyone's feeling, looking at potential problems and telltale signs, creating a culture that, that says it's okay not to be okay. And then also, if we've got time, we're going to try and look at how we can implement some simple things to influence these progressive changes. And this will all be done today with our panel, who are Carla Murray was going to be joining us, but true to lockdown, she's having some childcare issues, which has stopped her joining us today. But she is the head of HR for medical software business here in the UK, EMIS, and she has been leading their health and wellness approach, which has had some pretty significant changes over the last 12 months. We have Ben Wusterhagen, who is the MD and the Chief Product Officer of eAcademy in Berlin. He builds high-performance teams for e-learning solutions. Yep, next. And last but not least, we've got Daniel Fodor, who is the co-founder of DearEmployee. DearEmployee are a mental health risk assessment platform.
Yeah, so for the how we tend to run these events, what we do is the chat function is open for everyone in here. So if you have any questions as we go along, we'll just ask you to put them in the chat, and then they'll be monitored, and we will come back to them at the end. So we'll have 15 minutes, and then obviously if you want to save your questions to the end, fair enough. But we'll be monitoring the Q&A afterwards. So what tends to happen is that you put the questions in the chat, and then we'll answer it in the Q&A. George, I hope that answers your questions.
Put the questions into the Q&A. There's two separate functions, isn't there? Sorry.
Oh, is there? Sorry.
Yeah, because
sorry.
We're on the new.
Yeah, that's me using the other version of the of Zoom. So yeah, I stand corrected. Put it into the Q&A. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
It does say please use the chat function on that slide.
Over to Daniel. Do you want to talk us through what this data is telling us?
Sure, I love to. First of all, in preparation of the panel today, we were digging a bit into our data, our client data, and first of all, like the statistics provided here are just general trends that we are at the moment finding in our overall data across different sectors and different company sizes since the first lockdown. So important to mention that the changes in working conditions differ greatly between companies and sectors, right? So still we find some general trends which highly relates to the remote setting. And to give you some context, in our scientific survey, employees are rating their working conditions on a scale between 1 and 10. And I would like to show you the working conditions that have changed most negatively in our data since the first lockdown in Germany, in the perception of employees. I'm pretty sure there are not big surprises maybe, but I'm happy to hear later on if it also reflects your personal experiences. So first of all, like personal availability has changed negatively in a sense that people are experience blurring boundaries, right? Like between their work life and their leisure time, and seem to struggle to find good ways to deal with it. So like this mentality to be always on and having no clear boundaries, what's work time, what's leisure time, makes people struggle a lot. The second thing is lack of exchange with colleagues. So feeling of isolation at home, not being able to have a quick chat with colleagues, not only professional topics, but just like nice chats in between. And then also like contact with clients or suppliers and partners also seem to be tougher for employees at the moment. So also here, like in digital meetings, some key elements of communication are not available, right? So it can be harder to negotiate or to react in difficult conversational situations when, for instance, body language doesn't work the way we might be used to, or if we struggle with technical issues to set up a call, etc. So those are like working conditions that have rapidly changed since the first lockdown, and also physical demands increased at work, which is for many of us at work, at home at the moment, right? So I'm wondering who of you is listening from the sofa at the moment. So friendly reminder, take care about your ergonomic setup also at home, because we usually do not find the same ergonomic standards at home as we do in the office, right? So this can cause neck and back pain, what we also can see in our data, and it actually highly relates also to mental fatigue, because like psychosomatic, we call it like a psychosomatic downward spiral. When you feel mentally stressed, you also have a higher tension in your back, and vice versa with back pain, chronic back pain, you also feel mentally stressed easily, right? So I guess no big surprises here. Happy to hear your questions on that later. Also in the overall emotional exhaustion, we see an increase since the first lockdown. So employees seem to be more mentally exhausted, which is also the key pile of the burnout syndrome, right? So also our data proves a increase on that side. And I mean, the most requested measures of our clients at the moment pretty much reflect these working conditions I just talked about. So we get many requests for like workshops on how to fight the loneliness and isolation in remote work settings, also seminars on successful digital collaboration within a team, and also like how to lead digitally, how to negotiate digitally with clients, for instance, and also trainings on the ergonomic setup at home. So how can I, yes, stay healthy at home with the right ergonomic standards and taking breaks. And last but not least, also providing services like help for self-help, right? Like improving personal mental health. So yeah, that's basically it. And yeah, from here, I think we can start our conversation. I'm happy to hear what Ben's experience are.
Yeah, so I think the first topic that we wanted to discuss was about lockdown and living alone, and retros and balancing work and personal life, and core hours. So that particular area. So Ben, do you want to start discussing that particular area, and then obviously Daniel can jump in, and we'll jump in on that.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, this whole notion of mental fatigue in a remote setting was there before the pandemic, but I guess it was not there in that it became quite more drastic, and really depending on the situation of the people in the team. So we have people on our team with small children. We have people on the team living alone or living like in shared spaces, and kind of really depends on the situation. They have different challenges they have to cope with. And I guess what I saw, at least for myself, is that I had a harder time kind of coping with the challenges that are there anyway. If you're like 8 hours a day in Zoom calls or in team calls or whatever, is that when you have a curfew, you can't go out anymore, you can't go to your sports team anymore, the restaurants are closed, the clubs are closed, and that really put me in a weird place. And that I guess kind of assessing the situation of each and everyone in the team helps, and also trying to drive that understanding from the different people on the team, that everybody has a different challenge, a different situation.
Yeah, Daniel, how have you found it?
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I think the main difference with the lockdown is that people are forced to work remotely, or not all, but many, right? So it was an option before, and so we all totally perceive it. We like perceive it different now because we are forced to do it. And anytime you're forced to do something, it's not a positive emotion. And I think it gets just like what Ben said, it gets harder to differentiate between work time and leisure time, because you're locked at home. So every day basically can turn into a work day if we let it, right? And we have to set the boundary ourselves. And I've also experienced myself that, for instance, scheduling breaks and even off time in the calendar and really stick to it helps. It feels a bit strange sometimes, but I think it helps. And also like withstanding the temptation to always quickly check work messages late before bedtime or at weekends. So it's so easy, right? The device is always with us, so we have to set the boundaries ourselves.
I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I've been kind of in an interesting situation that the first lockdown I did live alone, and the second time I've had my girlfriend move in and we've kind of been living together, and it does feel very different. I think the pressure for me, there's been quite a clear, like I finish work and then I work in my office and I do try and break it up. But last year when I was living alone, I was working in the office, in the front room, in the kitchen, and everything all blurred into one day. And then sometimes it's very difficult to work out, am I stressed because of, I suppose, perceived being the restrictions on my personal life and all the kind of worries that that are being drummed up through the pandemic, or am I actually stressed because sometimes work's stressful and it's very hard to see where the line is. I think that's something that people are maybe struggling with a little bit. Would you agree?
Yeah, and I guess what can help here is also making that struggle a topic. Like usually with development teams and agile methodologies, you have retros. What I experience is making that a topic also in retros, not only looking at sprints or looking at the work done, but also looking at how did we do it and how's everybody doing and how are we coping with that. Helps a lot, because then you also can deal with it in a different way. You would probably not do that in a normal setting, where everything was pre-pandemic, so to say. Yeah,
I think just relying on people to do this kind of stuff for themselves makes it difficult, because when you are stuck in that rut yourself, it is hard for you to get out of it. So unless you've actually got someone, like you say, saying, how are you finding it? How are things doing? Then you can kind of come to an agreement, as a team or as a pair, rather than just saying, right, everyone, you be responsible for your own hours and you make sure you're okay yourself. It needs to be driven from the top down, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, and it's not the HR department's job, so we shouldn't wait for HR to do something here. I mean, HR can enable stuff, but from my perspective, I think every team member and also the leadership needs to take a role in here and make that a topic and help the team go through that.
Yeah.
Cool. Moving on to the next topic. So we're talking about collaboration, workspaces. What does that look like now whilst we're all in lockdown? And one of the things Carla was telling David and I the other day is when things open back up, they are changing their model of the business. We've closed some offices, or will be potentially closing some offices down, and then repurposing what it is and calling them collaboration hubs. So kind of embracing this change to remote, but then seeing, I've heard the term office as a service coined by a few of my clients as well. So, what are things looking like now whilst we are all working at home or wherever it might be, and where do you see the lasting impact, of this setup?
Yeah, maybe I can also say something about that, because usually we experience it very helpful also with our clients if HR or even the management itself provides the infrastructure and really promote it and promote a culture where it's totally cool to go into a digital shared desk, or for instance use a digital tea kitchen to meet up and also take the breaks to just chat about something completely else, not work, right? And having, for instance, coffee breaks, one-on-one sessions, to really promote, talk about social stuff, not only work. So but in the end, as also Ben just said, I think every team and team lead needs to promote it herself, himself, and exemplify it, using it herself, himself, and invite the team to join in.
Yeah, I would advocate for like decentral solutions. I don't think when you work in a bigger organization that everything needs to be kind of thought through and said, okay, that's our standard, and everybody has to meet at 4:15 for a digital beer. if that doesn't fit to the team. But I guess, the team should have kind of a freedom to do that. And when I look at our teams, like we have one team, they have a daily check-in because everybody, likes to start at the same time, and that works for them in a great way, because so they have the check-in, I have a coffee, whatever. Others have kind of a bi-weekly kind of event in the evening. People on that team don't have small children, so for them it works. And others, especially in development teams, have said, okay, we want to do more in pair programming as we did before. We want to do more mob programming, because if you do that, then we see each other. And also the kind of small hacks that right now I only have one screen. What I usually like to have personally is two screens. So when I'm in video meetings, I can see all the people by still seeing my screen working on stuff. Those are little things that kind of help you kind of create connection.
Yeah, I think that's interesting, because one thing that we've found through this, this pandemic, is that what works for one person might not work for everyone else. Like you said, obviously you've approached the teams in different ways, and I think a lot of companies take it from a strategic level of, right, this is what we're going to do, and it's got to be implemented company-wide, whereas that doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't work for a team, especially if you're a larger organization, and obviously with working conditions and what is that going to look like after lockdown. There'll be people that are dying to get back into the office because they can't work effectively from home, and then there's equally going to be people that feel like they've been revolutionized by working from home, and they don't want to go back into the office. And I think there's just got to be a degree of flexibility, hasn't there, moving forward, to make sure that you can match the needs of everyone that you employ. I think is what I found anyway.
Yeah, and it's going to be interesting how we conduct meetings in the future, because I think it will be hard to get everybody physical at the same place, so to say. So we need to have hybrid meetings, where people can drop in, working from home, working from wherever, and also people there in the office. So that's going to be an interesting thing to explore, and probably also a great opportunity for entrepreneurs out there, who want to create solutions for that.
Yeah.
I think tooling maybe plays a part in that. I mean, we, at AmSource, everything we do these days is through Teams, but for more sort of general chat, we tend to use things like WhatsApp, and maybe just kind of breaking, what is the formal tool and what is the kind of more fun team aspect. Maybe picking a tool to kind of define that, rather than it blurring into one thing. That might be quite a good way of doing things. Maybe it works for us anyway.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I would kind of try to even have like little things for each team, so a team feels more connected, and can have their things. Like we introduced just a channel just on Slack where we celebrate. So whenever somebody has something to celebrate, like a breakthrough or whatever, a new client or whatever it might be, right? They can celebrate there as if you would go through the office and say, hey, that really worked well. And there might be small hacks. And again, I would really advocate for like decentral solutions, and not trying to kind of have that corporate, that's our setup, and that's how everybody has to work. I guess that's, yeah.
And also trial and error, right? We also do like constant retros, team retros, and then derive some actions we want to try out. And if it doesn't work, we just dismiss it again. But sometimes, we find the same thing. We have our confetti channel to celebrate successes. We have, like, for instance, the digital workspace, which isn't used that much so far, because I think it's also a challenge to like in a digital space, we are very used to directly talk to each other. Like it's a culture of a direct meeting always, or you are like have your focus time alone at home, but there's nothing in between. I think it's also about promoting like a culture of digital collaboration, and that it's also okay to sit in the same digital room together without speaking the whole time to each other, right? It's something you really have to adapt to, I think.
Yeah. One of the things one of the attendees, Curtis, has mentioned is that they instead of just having 30-minute meetings, they're actually extending them by 15 minutes and cutting the meeting at 30, but then kind of encouraging general chit chat, water cooler chat that you would have normally got in the office to try and encourage, that aspect. It's not always very like, matter of fact, this is the meeting and then off you go. And then it's just all too formal, I think, or it has been, hasn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. So we'll move on to the next topic, which we've got titled as "It's Time to Ask, How Are You Feeling?" So obviously getting more into people's well-being here. So yeah, Daniel, do you want to kick us off with that?
How I am feeling?
Yeah. It's time to ask how you feel.
Thanks for asking.
No. I've already asked you that, but I will ask you again.
Yeah. No, sorry. Sorry. Can you repeat? I think I didn't really get the question.
Yeah, Max, do you want to collaborate on this one? Because obviously this is your
so I think sometimes we're looking for all the ways we can understand how people are feeling and trying to doing that thing that smart people do is overcomplicate it. But there's always time just to ask, how are people feeling? You are leading teams, you are managing people. Is it really that simple? Just asking them, how are you feeling today? Is that a useful tool?
I totally say yes, because I think there's a big difference in just say, how do you do? Like as just saying hello and hey, how are you feeling at the moment during the pandemic, for instance, like giving context to your question and like really taking the time to listen. So to invite your peer to tell how she or he's feeling. And it's actually something I'll try to do every week, like in one-to-one sessions, to really directly ask, hey, how are you feeling at the moment in the pandemic? And if you spot that people are maybe struggling, you can provide guidance or help. Is there anything I can help with you? And I think it's a very easy and straightforward tool to get a feeling how people are feeling at the moment. Yeah.
Ben?
I totally agree. I think that's good for one-on-ones, also for retros. What I also, sometimes do if I'm really grumpy, I just announce it, say, hey guys, nothing against you, but I'm just grumpy today. And that sometimes even helps to, get everybody in a better mood and find the ground to talk about that stuff. And I guess especially in such a challenging situation, that should find a place at work, even though usually we would say, we keep feelings out of work, but.
Even as a manager, right, Ben? Because with that, you also invite your team members to do the same, right? And that it's okay to say that if you do it yourself. So it's
because I think we're always sort of, we've kind of been raised to think, you've got to be professional at work at all times and things, but we are all human at the end of the day. And I suppose you're a co-founder, Daniel, and you're managing director, Ben. So if you're saying I'm not all right, then that surely would let people feel it's okay to do the same. It's literally coming from the top down, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I read a book by Amy Edmondson called The Fearless Organization that helped me a lot to understand that, and also to hopefully create that psychological safety so everybody in the team can speak up, can talk about feelings, and can also disagree in other things. And I think Amy Edmondson, she looked at the Google study back in the days where Google kind of was checking, what is it that a team makes really successful, and they found out psychological safety was one of the big points there.
Yeah,
and there's like also this concept of presenteeism, as we call it, like going to work sick. Nowadays, it's very easy to work sick, right? Because you're at home and you're maybe not that strict on the topic to yourself, but at the end, you see that like presenteeism actually affects more costs for the company than absenteeism. So it's also like a topic of efficacy, right? And not only about like being nice, because if people are working during feeling bad, they do mistakes, they maybe infect others. So I think every company should promote like a healthy leadership to prevent that, actually. Yeah.
And just on that, it's easy to encourage people to ask the question, how are you feeling to your teams? whose responsibility is it to ensure that those people have got the tools that they need to be able to help the people that say they might not be doing okay, if that makes sense? Because if someone, musters up the courage to say, look, I'm not doing well at the moment, but then the person that they say that to isn't adapt at dealing with that situation, where does that come from? Where do they get the knowledge from to help the people?
Yeah,
difficult question.
well,
I don't know.
I mean, I think we can expect from every team leader to be a health professional, right? So I think it's important to like, first of all, promote a culture of or providing knowledge and tools to team leaders how what is actually healthy leadership, but then more spotting when someone might need help and then take the right action, or give some context. For instance, many clients of us also establish something like a employee assistant program where you can like anonymously just call if you struggle like personally, because you might not share everything with your employer or your manager, even if you have such a culture, right? So I think like having the possibility for anonymous help always is something we recommend to our clients.
I think we're we've got a similar kind of plan at our place, haven't we, Dave? And it's something that we know is there, but we don't always. I know not everyone uses it as much as they should. We've got a health plan in place, and those services are available. And sometimes you just forget they're there, and maybe just looking at what tools and what things are provided by the business, and just making it obvious to people and letting them know that these things, they're bought and paid for already. We're just not using them. Yeah.
Just reminding people that they're there. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I was just reading the chat while we're talking about it, and a lot of people are saying the same things about, it comes from the top, the leadership, and, if the leaders are not telling people when they're having a bad day, or if they're working when they're sick, then it often encourages the people that are below them to, do the same. So actually, it's got to come from the people to the top to the bottom, so that it works. It works its way through the company, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, we had that in chat as well. The notion of who's responsible for providing the tools and the help here. And I guess in the end, who's responsible for hiring? Of course, every team leader, whoever hires somebody, is responsible for hiring. But getting the right tools or getting the right setup, obviously, then the bigger your organization is, the more people you have dedicated to that. But in the end, you have to make sure that is happening, and not wait for not wait for HR or not wait for the board or whoever to provide something, but make sure that you're asking for the right resources, being in a team lead position.
Yeah. We're going to move on to the next point, but I think we should kind of rejig the points around a little bit to kind of keep the flow of the conversation going. So we'll come back to how do we spot problems with people, but I think the things that we're talking about here is creating a culture that allows people to know that it's okay to not be okay and talk about it, and once you if that comes from the top down, people talk about culture all the time, especially with David and I, people looking for jobs. What are you looking for? It needs to be a good culture, and it's sometimes a bit of a woolly thing thrown around, but it is very subjective. And when you work in a good business which is cultivated a culture, it is that kind of magic something that you can't quite touch, but it's there. And I think this whole conversation around mental health needs to then be baked into a company's culture, doesn't it? And then it's everybody's responsibility, whether you're the new starter, on a grad program, or you're the managing director, co-founder, or whatever. But what does that's easier said than done. What sort of things have you guys implemented in your businesses to try and do this?
Well, maybe like also from our background, like first of all, there's in most countries in the European Union, there's also legal obligation, right, to assess risks for mental health at work. So I think healthy companies are doing it anyway, but as we see, there is an urge to act in most sectors. And what we think is like constantly listening to employee feedback is the key, right? Because I mean, in big companies, you cannot interview every employee every week. So therefore, you have like surveying methods to detect risks and potentials and resources for mental health constantly, and from there derive what measures to be taken. Because as we said in the beginning, there's not like any solution from the shelf, right? You have to listen to the employees first, because they are the experts for their own health, and then derive structured recommendations from that and provide tailored solutions. So because I think there's not the one solution that works for everyone, right?
Well,
So
I guess that, please go ahead, sorry.
So just to complete, I think I see that as like the main obligation from the employer side, right? To provide the working conditions so that it is possible to work healthy, and then also provide hands-on actions like more working on already existing symptoms. So inviting the employee to, for instance, use health promotion services and so on. But this should only always be accompanying like the main goal on working on the working conditions, right? To not getting sick in the first place.
Well, I guess even before that, kind of seeing that this is an issue. So when I have an accident with my bike and break my arm, well, then I'm sick and can't work because can't type and I have to rest. But admitting that this is also a very normal issue with mental health problems, and those people are not crazy having mental health problems, and it's just there, and you have to take it seriously. That's one, and then also as an organization, allocate time and resources to it. Saying, hey guys, please have a water cooler conversation, but do it in the free time. Might not be the best way to tackle it. So I guess just setting the boundaries and setting the right environment for it, and also, as I said, allocating budget for it as a first start. Because just only talking about it won't help much.
Yeah, because everything, goodwill gets you so far, but there's a few comments in the chat. Alan's a mental health first aider, so there will be a cost to that training, I imagine. Somebody talking about bringing in experts, referring to experts, and we've got George talking about a little bit of budget just for some fun stuff as well. All costs money, and that's always going to be a potential blocker on this, especially companies have been, fighting to survive over the last year and things, does there come a point where, the return on investment outweighs, the cost of not doing anything? And, how do you quantify that? It's cheaper to look after people and invest money into mental health programs, services, tools, or whatever, than just leaving people to break down, because I suppose it's quite hard to track. Is it, Daniel? You probably a bit more.
It's actually possible, because we also have some scientific projects on that. For instance, we detect the return on investment from 1 to 3.2 actually, but the thing is, there's always a threat of wasting budget, like health budget, if you just take something from the shelf which sounds nice and provide it to the employees, and often we realize that no one actually uses it, right? So you might buy, I don't know, some courses for mental health training, but if you do not really detect in the first place what people really need, then it might be a waste of money. So what we see is like tailoring solutions by really detecting what risks are at stake in different business units in my company, and then pinpoint different measures. And often it's just really quick wins. It's not always about a huge change process. Sometimes you have quick wins, low-hanging fruits to just get it started in the different teams. That really helps, and that pays off. But if you just provide something for everyone in general, we also experience that this is not really effective, to be honest.
Interesting. I think with a lot of the stuff we've been talking about, we've been speaking about, implementing culture and the things that we can do to prevent these things from happening. I think the reality is that as much as people try, there are always going to be some people that are still affected. You can have the best employee assistance, like mental fatigue / wellbeing programs implemented, but there are still some people that are going to be affected. I guess a lot of people that are attending this are probably wanting to know how do we potentially identify the people within our teams or within our organisations that might be struggling. What are the best ways to identify these people?
Well, I would love to have a solution here. I just can say, I'm still experimenting. I try to, have more one-on-ones, every week, every 2 weeks, where 15 minutes check-ins, where both people really take time, and not have like this one quarterly 1 hour meeting, but rather, as I said, 15 minutes every 2 weeks. That's one thing that we try to do, and also encourage people in the team to, look out for one another. And then help out. And third thing is kind of really make it a topic, and find time to do it. In group settings as well as in one-on-ones. But I would love to have the solution. I don't have it. Somebody else has it, please. Let me know. Daniel, what's your research on that?
And as said, I think there is not the solution, right? It's about you really have to dig in and listen to your employees, and with listening I mean like a structured way, like constant surveying with scientific methods, and then really derive what's at stake in the different teams, right? Because I think there's not the one solution. There are many great solutions out there, and depending on the resources of the company, you can also do a lot of things on your own, but there are also great services helping out there, right? And I think it's about finding the right solutions for the teams with specific risks at stake.
I guess we're all in this remote setting, and that's kind of what this event's all about. But if we kind of rewind it a year and we're all back in the office, and I'm not having a good day, we're all social creatures, and we pick up on body language, or you might see things as my line manager, like productivity dropping, or I'm late. Are all those things still going on? Like they were. People not knowing what to Zoom meetings. You can quantify someone's performance dropping. You can see the quality of the work, decreasing. Cameras turned off. Lack of eye contact. These sorts of things. Are these all things that are being reported? Are these things that people are picking up on as leaders?
Do you want to answer, or should I?
Please go ahead.
I mean, I think like even in the digital or in the remote setting, it is possible to grasp, for instance, discomfort of your peer talking. Like if you can also grasp if someone like is distracted often, right, and doesn't properly answer, or if for instance, the view wanders to nowhere whilst talking to each other. I think there are signs and possibilities to distract or to detect discomfort, even in a remote setting. But it's tougher, it's harder, but I think it's something one can learn, right?
And it might be even something that we get out of that pandemic, when, once we all through it, and once we all, found out that it might not be so easy to cope with stuff. So maybe we can take that in a post-pandemic world as a new part of our, cultures, and keep that making a topic, and not just, put away and say, okay, pandemic is over. Let's get on with something else. I think that might be a chance here.
Yeah. I think what you said, Ben, at the beginning was interesting to me, that you're asking these kind of questions on a weekly basis in one-on-ones and in groups and stuff, and I think you're basically just maximizing the chance, aren't you, of being able to help people. I think if it's just a case of someone asking someone every 3 or 4 weeks how you're doing, they might feel that structure's not there, where you know, they might have had a bad day 2 weeks ago, but because you've asked once a month, like they might have got over it and they might have had the following week. So it's about having the regularity of checking in on people so that, you know, if they had a bad day yesterday or they've had a bad day today, that you can catch it rather than it being, oh, well, that was 2 weeks ago, so there's no point in saying it now. So I think it's all to do with fostering that culture so that you enhance the chance of being able to catch it before it gets out of hand, I think.
Yeah. Are there any other points we want to cover, or maybe we can look at moving on to the Q&A? We've got a few in the chat function, in the Q&A function, and there's been quite a few people contributing throughout in the chat, so perhaps we can step in on some of these.
Yeah, I think obviously I was going to say, if there's people that had things that they wanted to get covered that we might not have gone through, then please do put it in the Q&A now. But we've got an interesting question, the first one on there, which is how have the panel's personal relationships endured throughout the pandemic? Constantly being together has brought its challenges for me. It's become quantity time, not quality time spent together. So I'll start on that, and then obviously if anyone's got any difference on that. So for me, I work from home, and my partner is she's a teacher, so she's teaching from home as well. But what we found has worked best for us, and this might be difficult for other people, is that we've got our own individual workplaces. So I work in a different place to where she works, and we've just found it that day that it's you know, it's basically like we've been at work anyway, and then when we're together, we're in a different place to where we both work. Whereas I think if we were working, you know, side by side, it might become a bit more difficult. But that's what's worked for me. I'm not sure if anyone else can comment on that.
I live alone, so I have and I converted actually a room that was not meant for working to a kind of a working situation. I tried to get a chair, a desk that is adjustable. I try to, you know, do every other hour standing, and I blocked out in the recent months lunch breaks. So I put it in my calendar. I don't take any meetings. I mean, today I do, but usually I don't. To actually go out, you know, take a walk, take a coffee somewhere, and have that lunch break, which I didn't do before. And yeah, I mean, but you know, for me, I really like to go out. I really like to be in restaurants. I really like to travel. So even though it might be very luxury problems that not being able to do so, it affects me and affects my life, and it pisses me off. But hopefully it will be over soon.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm missing just simplicity of someone bringing me some nice food. You know, I enjoy cooking, but I also enjoy going to the restaurant. You know, but I've got my own personal workspace. I've always worked from home for a day or two a week anyway. But I've really sort of made it quite regimented that this is my workspace, and then my home is my home. You know, my girlfriend works out the kitchen. Usually, sometimes in the living room if she's that way inclined, but we keep it very separate, and we see each other at lunch, we have breakfast together, but it is like being at work. So then when we finish work and we're cooking, we're having our evening meal, it actually feels like our time and we're not working, and it's quite a nice way of splitting things up, and it's definitely made the days a little less longer than they were last year when I was living alone and just blurring from one to the next.
I also can relate a lot to the comment. I live with my wife and two small kids, so one lockdown child, as we call it. So yeah, also sometimes not easy, right? In the intense times of lockdown, working like both of us working with two small kids. But now I have like the office just 2 minutes walk from home, so I can from time to time escape to find my own space. But yeah, it's challenging, sure.
Sounds like you almost designed that on purpose as the co-founder, Daniel.
Oh, it's totally by chance.
Yeah.
Rachel asks quite an interesting question, and the irony of this webinar was not lost on us when we were planning it, but we're talking about more one-on-ones, asking people how they're doing and using Zoom Teams or whatever else you want to do. But at the same time, we're complaining about Zoom fatigue. Like, are we just, causing ourselves more problems, or is this just the tool that we have to use to do it? Anyone's thoughts?
We try to establish a policy where we have a rating after each meeting, kind of was that meeting useful for you or not, and if it was not, then we have have something to talk about. And secondly, at least in some teams, we said, okay, if you feel you can't contribute to the meeting, then please go. You don't have to be in a meeting just because it's Thursday or whatever. I don't know, maybe some others have ideas here, but I like to have the camera on in meetings and like have an active meeting, rather have it short, have it crisp but active, and not like be in a Zoom meeting, everybody has his camera off, everybody does something else, and then there's like kind of this Zoom radio going. I don't like that personally, but I guess that's personal.
Yeah.
Totally.
I think I was going to say, I think when we spoke to Carly yesterday, obviously, unfortunately, she hasn't been able to make it onto the video today, but she said that they'd like allocated time in everyone's calendars where they weren't allowed to do Zoom meetings. Obviously, I appreciate, depending on what your level of role is, that might differentiate, but they'd allocated it. So they said, right, between these hours, you can't do Zoom meetings. And then I guess the only other thing that you could probably do is assess all the other meetings that you're having. Obviously, these ones are really important because these are the ones that are checking in on people and making sure they're okay. But the other ones that you're doing, are they essential? Does that have to be a Zoom meeting that you're having there, or could we do something else? So reduce the meetings that you've got by assessing whether they're whether they're relevant or not, and then if it's possible, I know it's a big culture change, but block out some time in people's diaries where they're not on a video so they can just do the things that they need to do.
Yeah. Totally. Yeah, same here. I think blocking the calendar with like own focus work is really healthy. And for instance, to me, I think everything more than 3 intense meetings a day is too much, and then I cannot concentrate. So therefore, I would then block the remaining work time so that no one, puts in another Zoom meeting. And I think everyone needs to find his or her right balance. But still, I think it's also a threat to lose the relationship to your team members if you're not doing it at all. So let's say at least once a week, I think you should have a one-on-one with your close colleagues.
Yeah.
More questions, Dave, in the Q&A you want to run through?
I'll have a read through. I think what a lot of people are saying, which I think is really important, again, is getting outside, making sure that you are actually going and doing some exercise. I know that we've been good as a business, and we've encouraged people to do it. And I've seen other people do things like where they've had their meetings where they've said, right, everyone, let's go for a walk and do our meeting, for example, just to make sure that they've encouraged people to do it. Because I think a lot of people say, right, I'll do it after work or whatever, and then they might not do it. So if there's anything, obviously you don't have to say you have to go on a walk, because again, you don't want to make someone do something that they don't want to do. But I think just little things like that can make sure that people do get outside and get some fresh air, which I think we all do need at the moment. So
blocking the time out, I mean, we've mentioned it a few times, but blocking that time out to take your lunch or go on a walk, or the other week I had a crazy diary, so many meetings in. I ended up having to block time out just to make sure I went to the supermarket. Just an example, but it was just before I know it was Thursday. I'd been meaning to go Tuesday, Wednesday, and it's just making sure you take that time and block it out. Otherwise, it's just so easy to work, and then that that you end up just running yourself into the ground, don't you?
Yeah. I think there's a few questions on there that have been unanswered, but I'm just obviously cautious of the time that we're nearly to an hour, and I know people will be getting back to work and stuff. So what I'd say is that anyone that's got any questions that have remained unanswered, if you could get in touch with us via our emails or through our contact page on the website, and what we'll do is we'll make sure that we present them to Daniel and Ben and get them answered for you, because there'll be some that have gone unanswered on there. So just make sure that you get in touch, because some of them have come through as anonymous attendees, and then we'll get them answered for everyone.
Yes, I think we've covered quite a lot here. I think the key points to just sort of run through is, it needs to be a top-down thing, that creating a safe environment to talk about this stuff. Ultimately, it's everybody's responsibility to look out for each other. But especially if you're a leader of some sort, it isn't HR's problem to sort. They're an enabler and a support. If you have a HR function or something similar, they're there to support and give the tools and advice and whatever else is maybe needed. But we've all got to do this, and I think some of this is going to cost money. I think if you haven't got budget for it already, maybe put that into the mix now, and speak to whoever's in charge, your FD or your MD or whatever it might be, and start talking about getting some resources to make this a topic that's not something that we're just talking about, but we're doing something about it. Yeah, definitely. And I would also recommend check out DearEmployee. It's a really good tool. It's a good way of finding out what your staff are really thinking, and if you do need to get some budget, it's not crazy expensive. It's money worth spending. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and we can put you in touch with the panelists as well. But yeah, obviously, thank you for our panelists. So thanks to Ben and Daniel, and obviously Carla as well. She couldn't make it today, but she gave us some good content, and we had some really good chats with her beforehand, and we'll catch up with her afterwards. And thanks everyone for joining. We'll be in touch with some information, infographics afterwards. And like I said, if you've got any questions for us or for any of the panel, then just get in touch and let us know. Yep, thanks everybody. Take care.
Great, thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
for your
guys. Thank you.
Enjoy your lunch.
Bye.
Bye.